All right, we are on the air. It is February 1st, the night before a potentially significant snowstorm, and tonight we have, in addition to the usual Dr. Tom Novak, who's not a doctor, we've also got Daniel Dix, who used to work for the Weather Channel, and I'm sure has some very good insights for us as well. So this will be an interesting discussion tonight. Tom, you want to start out with some maps, or?
Well, yeah, and I think it's important to know that the 00 Zulu maps, the NAM computer model, GFS, European model, they're all starting to come down right now. So we're going to have a fresh set of data, probably between about 9 p.m. our time and midnight. So I'm sure a lot of weather people are going to be combing through all that model data and refreshing some of their maps. So just keep that in mind.
You know, Tom and Daniel, one of the questions, I'm going to try to weave in some of these questions, as long as you're talking about models, maybe this is a good time to throw this in. Somebody, Min Moxie, one of our loyal viewers, says, how difficult is it for the models to interpret a system so dynamic such as this one? How likely is it that snow totals could actually be quite a bit more since this thing is such a beast and models are having a difficult time due to this?
Yeah, well, I'll start off with that, and then Daniel can chime in. But I don't think the model data the models are having a tough time with this storm. They've been very consistent, in my opinion, over the last 5 days. So, you know, Daniel, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. They've been very consistent, and even when it came ashore in California yesterday, they did a pretty decent job of depicting the strength from surface all the way up to mid-levels. And we saw what happened in LA and the San Diego area. They had quite a bit of wind damage. I knew a few folks out there sent me pictures, and it was a pretty interesting storm as they came through. But that was pretty much expected and forecasted. And then once now that has come ashore, there's a lot more data points to actually go into the analysis to initialize the models, and that's what has really you started to see the intensification of the system through now into tomorrow. And also the movement of the track slightly to the north. And it's really as more data has come in, and that the models have reacted to that.
Okay.
Yeah, and you know, Bill, we're all talking about heavy snowfall now, and a lot of people are thinking that the computers are just latching onto this and making the storm stronger than what we originally anticipated. Whereas I'm going to show you guys, and you're probably seeing it right now, the storm system actually may not be as strong as now everybody has been thinking here over the last 6 to 8 hours. And the reason why, Bill, is and this is one of the reasons, this is the 500 millibars vorticity map. Okay, this shows twist in the atmosphere. We like to look at troughs in the atmosphere, and what I'm showing you is that you can clearly see that there is a storm system over the desert southwest now. And watch what happens to this storm system as it moves northeast during the day tomorrow. Now, this is at about noon tomorrow, Bill, and this is a very strong, compact vorticity max over Kansas and Nebraska. Basically, what that means is that this is a lot of energy coming out into Nebraska and Kansas. So this storm should be really cranking by about noon tomorrow in Nebraska, western, northern Iowa, and then even into southern Minnesota. But watch what happens over time later Tuesday night and into Wednesday. That compact, real tight vorticity max shears out, which means it likely is going to decrease in intensity a little bit, if not a lot.
Why is that happening?
Well, it's probably going to lose its support, not only at the lower layers, but in the upper layers of our atmosphere at the jet stream level. It's likely going to lose some support, and it's going to run out of the support, and then that's how a storm often will weaken. You know, Bill, storms are kind of like growing up, right? You have an infancy stage, an adolescent stage, then you get to a mature stage, and then eventually you die off in life, and that happens to storms.
Do storms start to get forgetful and forget the names of everybody? That kind of thing? No. Okay.
That happens to us, Bill, especially us weather people. I can tell you that. So,
okay, Daniel, just get your thought. Do you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I was going to see if this works. You see water vapor imagery?
No, still see you.
Let's see if that happens.
Much better. There you go.
So going on with what Bill was talking about, and Tom, you saw the models picking up with in New Mexico and West Texas, even southern Colorado, and it really shows the intensity of that shortwave, that Vort max. And I always look at this probably before I look at even at models. I start looking at satellite upper air and then surface data. But you can really see intensity, a lot of bubbling going on. There's a lot of ripples and waves, and if you even look across the northern plateau of Mexico, you can see the ripples right through here. There's a strong jet that's coming through here, so it's really helping to intensify as it wraps around into central Colorado, and that's why they're starting to get some pretty heavy snows already in the front range of the Rockies and spreading out into Nebraska. And as that goes into the northeast tomorrow, into Nebraska and Iowa, if that jet begins to outrun it by tomorrow night, yeah, it will weaken. Sometimes the models may not always pick up if there's anything secondary back in this flow, and if that does come through tomorrow and is picked up by the models, if there is something that's not always detectable, that sometimes will actually reinforce it and regenerate it. Maybe you got old and sick, but you took some good medicine, and that could be that, and that could regenerate you as it gets to Wisconsin up into the UP. So that is possible. You have to keep an eye on that. And that's why you don't always look at models, but you want to look at real data as much as you possibly can.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's very well put, Daniel. And what he's showing you, Bill, is what I have now up on the 850 millibar chart. Of course, this is the temperature map at 850 millibars, which is one of the lower layers of our atmosphere. And we look for this light blue line, Bill, which is the 30-degree Fahrenheit line, for the rain-snow line, of course, or at least typically, which could be the rain-snow line. And Daniel was showing you very clearly this surge of dry air and cool air into the desert southwest on that water vapor imagery. And that's that air now that's punching into New Mexico. Now, here's what's good news for snow lovers, Bill. We want that 850 millibar 32-degree Fahrenheit line to be south of Minnesota. And as we go through time, this is now Tuesday afternoon, look at how far southeast of Minnesota that rain-snow line is likely going to be located. It's going to be basically from about Des Moines, Iowa, to about Milwaukee. So whatever does fall through our atmosphere tomorrow here in southern Minnesota and western Wisconsin is likely going to be snow, and we don't have to worry about that mix or rain cutting down the snow totals.
Tom, one of the questions from one of our anonymous viewers was whether this will be a wet snow or a dry snow or in between. What do you think about that?
Well, I expect it to be somewhere in that 10-to-1 to 15-to-1 snow-to-water ratio, which I guess for a good term that I would use is maybe a moderate consistency. So not too wet to where it's going to be melting and become slushy, but certainly not the real dry, fluffy snow that's going to blow around. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm not expecting blizzard conditions here in southeastern Minnesota. Maybe, yes, out in southwestern Minnesota, just because of it being so rural and wide open. They could likely get blizzard conditions down there. But yeah, I would like to see the snow be more of a fluffy snow to create blizzard conditions all over Minnesota and western Wisconsin.
And I think that profile in southwestern Minnesota, even south central Mankato, Marshall, Worthington, you're going to have snow ratios that are going to be a little bit greater, 14, 15, 16, just because of the cold air advection that's going to take place through the column. And you're going to have good frontal genetic forcing, the dendritic temperatures, that 700 millibar, minus 10 to minus 18. Perfect deep layer in that area. And so I think out there, the snow consistency will be a little bit different than it will say for Rochester, maybe even the southeast Twin Cities metro. That's where the blizzard warnings have been hoisted up by the Weather Service because of the travel issues. I'm from Mankato originally, and I know how bad it can be out there in the plains area from Mankato west towards the South Dakota border. It's a rough go when you're out there in the blowing snow.
Now, Bill, we're talking about snow totals, and I'm going to show you two weather maps. One of them, the computer models, by the way. One of them is what we call the RAP, the Rapid Update Cycle computer model. And then the other one is going to be, I believe, the NAM high-res model. But this is the RAP computer model. This goes about 18 hours out into the future. It's a expected snow totals over the next 18 hours. And what I want you to do, Bill, is focus on Nebraska. And watch what happens over time as we get into now tomorrow morning. This is at about 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. You can see heavy snows approaching 10 to 12 inches in portions of southern Nebraska, certainly well over 6 inches in Nebraska. And then watch this area expand into western Iowa and southern Minnesota as we get to about, this is about noon, 1 o'clock tomorrow. Okay, but what's really important, Bill, is look at the northern edge of this heavier snow band. It basically goes to just, well, right around Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And if we were to extrapolate and continue this further east and northeast as we head into tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow evening, you can be pretty much rest assured that a very sharp northwest to southwest, or northwest to southeast snow gradient is going to develop right across the Twin Cities metro. Surprise, surprise, right? We're kind of used to that. Now, here is the NAM high res. It's the 4K res, what they call the WRF computer model. And watch what it shows as we go through time. Again, look at Nebraska. Pretty consistent with at least the rapid update cycle with heavy snow over much of Nebraska. But look at it's a little bit further north with the heavy snow band. Kind of hard to tell if you're not really studying these maps closely, but trust me, it's a little bit farther north with its placement of heavy snow. And then watch where it takes that accumulating snow almost directly through the Owatonna area, maybe into of course into the Rochester area, and then the 6-inch totals right up into the southern metro of the Twin Cities. Now, it's going to be interesting to hear what Daniel has to say about this, but I think this is a little optimistic. And I expect that this axis of heavier snow is going to perhaps be 50 miles or so further south. And then, again, look at what the NAM computer model does. It kind of weakens the snow system as it gets into Wisconsin. So these are things that we're going to need to really watch as we get the 00 Zulu computer model data to see if it hangs on to this weakening scenario.
Yeah, I agree. If you follow the HRR, especially as you get closer, you're going to start to see a better resolution of these versus the NAM 12 kilometer, the GFS, and in European. So I trust those more. Same thing with the HOP. WRF is another good short range. It has some ensembles that you can look at. And I think that's going to be the key between now and tomorrow afternoon, is to really watch how those are handling the storm as it moves in, and then just keep an eye on the satellite and radar trends. Given the dynamics involved, parts of Nebraska, northwest Iowa, maybe southern Minnesota, don't be surprised if you get a Jim Cantore thundersnow episode. It's very possible. I know Jim is in Omaha right now. I texted him this morning. He was pretty excited to hopefully see some thundersnow, and I said, well, if luck comes out, maybe I'll come into Minnesota. So I told him, you missed out coming to the Twin Cities. I'd give you a visit. But it's very possible with all the dynamics in place that there will have some thundersnow with this, at least initially through probably midday Tuesday, before the system maybe weakens a little bit.
Agreed. One last computer model for you guys. This is the European computer model forecast for snow during the next 48 hours, so basically the duration of this snowstorm. And this was the big red flag to me. By the way, this came out this morning, so this is the 12 Zulu model. But watch what it does to the snow as this snow band heads northeast. Very clear, obvious that it keeps the heaviest snows over Nebraska and northwestern Kansas, and then it kind of shears out this storm, or at least weakens it, as the snow band moves northeast into southeastern Minnesota. And the European model is not very excited for snow in the Twin Cities. It's got anywhere from about 2 to about 5 inches of snow in the Twin Cities, which would put us well under the warning criteria. And of course, we are in a winter storm warning over a good chunk of the Twin Cities. So this was a red flag to me. This makes me believe that some forecasters are being a little optimistic with how much snow is going to fall, especially in the Twin Cities.
Yeah, this will be interesting to see how the European does in this, because it hasn't been exactly stellar this winter overall. It's been great at picking up the initial storms, bringing it out, but when it comes to the details, it has not done as well as even the NAM or the GFS in some situations. If you remember last almost 2 weeks now in DC, the NAM actually was the better model, believe it or not, as much as it gets ridiculed. The European was not that great, when it came to the details. Just a lot of it has a larger domain resolution, whereas NAM and your HRR have a higher resolution, and that is a factor. So I think we have to. Some of the forecasts are a little high, some of them are low, and if you're in between, I think that's a safe bet for tomorrow. Southern Twin Cities, anywhere from 5 to 9, and as you get into Mankato, Owatonna, Rochester, their amounts are going to go up a little bit more. And as I think the real impact tomorrow, even if it was 2 inches of snow or 3 inches of snow in the Twin Cities, it's going to maximize right at rush hour. And that's what the impact is really going to be of people coming out of work. A lot of schools are already closing, but those who close early at 1 o'clock that decided to go tomorrow morning, that's where it's going to be interesting, especially in southern and southwestern Minnesota and to north, even in towards the Iowa border. But most of them have closed already because they know what's going on. They've got a good handle of the forecast given to them. So that's really going to be the impact, is the timing.
Yeah. So just before you go on to talk about accumulations, Tom and Daniel, well, you already talked about some of those. One of the questions that I thought might be good to ask, somebody wanted to know, Pete wants to know, where are these models actually run, and what kind of hardware is done on them, the nuts and bolts. What can you just talk about, the actual models and how they work?
The actual GFS and the North American model, the NAM, those are run out of Washington, D.C. By the National Weather Service and their supercomputing center there. And the European, the ECMWF, is actually run in London, as is the UKMET, the UKMET. So those are both run in the London area, and they're very competitive with each other. It's kind of interesting, the story. But your short-range models can be run locally at your small weather service offices may have a microscale or mesoscale model. Those are run locally, but all the data still comes from the national centers feeding into it to initialize it. But as far as the models you see every day on your different various websites, those are all run out of Washington, D.C. headquarters.
Okay. Interesting.
All right. Snow totals, Bill, here you go. Now, Daniel threw out some of his thoughts, and he can kind of pick apart my map, but this is right from Novak Weather. You can see I'm kind of agreeing with the European model a little bit here. Now, I have expanded, or at least I'm a little bit more optimistic for heavy snow in southeastern Minnesota, especially near Rochester and La Crosse and points on south. But I think that axis of heavy snow is going to run from around Sioux City, east and northeast to the La Crosse and Rochester area, where I won't be surprised to hear of 8, 9, 10-inch snow totals in Rochester and La Crosse. But then as you go northwest, of course, we talked about that sharp gradient. I'll be surprised if more than 6 inches of snow falls anywhere in the Twin Cities. Dakota, Scott counties, yeah, I could see somewhere close to 6 inches in those areas. I think the Twin Cities International Airport is going to be in that 4 to 5 inch range. And then, of course, totals dropping off quickly as you head northwest to where St. Cloud barely even gets an inch out of this. And then I am expecting the storm to lose some of its punch as it heads northeast into Wisconsin. But keep in mind, these totals are through about 3 a.m. on Wednesday. So after 3 a.m. Wednesday, I do still expect some snow over northern Wisconsin, but certainly not at the totals that you're going to find here in Iowa, southeastern Minnesota, and then Nebraska. And then, of course, what you don't see is the heavy snow that fell earlier during this time frame in western and southern Nebraska. Daniel, what do you think?
I think that's a good start. I do think if the warmer advection, the initial nose, goes into southern Minnesota, and then you're followed by what's left of the upper level, the vorticity maximum deformation zone. You sometimes we get a double doozy, as they call it, where when you get that initial warmer advection, heavy snow, that's what will be happening in the afternoon hours. And then you get the back end of the short wave come through southern Minnesota. If those two things come together, then you're probably going to see that heavy snow at least expand from northern Iowa into southern Minnesota. And that's what we have to keep an eye for. And the fact that the trend, and even looking at water vapor this evening compared to what the models had yesterday, that is very deep, and it's becoming a negative tilt, and that also helps to push things a little bit farther north. So we'll just have to keep an eye on it and see what happens. I'm in Dakota County, so I'm pulling for 6 inches plus. I got my yardstick from the Weather Service, a big bright orange one from the Duluth office gave me, and I want to use it. I want to see couple more than 3 or 4 inches being covered by it. So we'll see what happens.
What do you think the airport's going to get, Daniel? Tom kind of said 4 to 5.
But I'm going to say 5.8.
5.8.
So we're not that far off, Bill. I mean, I think that's, and I think many of the outlets are saying in that 4 to 6 inch range in the heart of the metro. So I think that's what we should expect. And Daniel brings up a very important point here. We're expecting some sort of a deformation zone to wrap up over southern Minnesota, and if that does happen, and then maybe a second surge of energy comes in into that deformation zone, we could get totals that get a little out of hand over portions of southern Minnesota. It's just that my gut feeling, Bill, is that as this storm continues to head east and northeast, it's going to shear out a little bit and lose some intensity. That's what I'm banking on now, but as the model data comes in this evening, I think we're going to feel more confident on whether that deformation zone develops or not.
You're saying by the time it gets to Wisconsin, it's kind of ready for the retirement home.
Yep, that's exactly what I think.
Anything else, gentlemen?
No, hey, I just want to thank Daniel for showing up and hanging out with us. He's got really some good stuff, so it doesn't hurt having somebody who's knowledgeable like that on this.
Yeah, it's a little fun. I'm more with air pollution meteorology these days, so it's good to step back into the old school severe weather and winter weather, which winter weather is my favorite. But so I appreciate you guys having me on, and let's watch what happens tomorrow.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Daniel.
You bet.
All right.
No, Dan, see you guys later.
We'll see what happens.
Have a good one. Take care.
All right, bye-bye.